I was sitting in the clinic's waiting area when my phone vibrated. It was my only child, Samantha. Her voice held a coldness I had never heard before as she said, "Mom, we're flying to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your lake house and your car. We needed the funds. Goodbye." She ended the call without a second of hesitation. 72 years of life, 46 years of raising her, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal saved so she could have better, and in one phone call, she discarded me like I was nothing. But instead of tears, I felt something unexpected. Calm, a strange, quiet calm. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and until that moment, I believed I understood my daughter. I became a widow just 6 months ago. My husband, Henry, died of a sudden heart attack during breakfast. That morning was like any other. He brought me tea with sugar, buttered toast, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good morning, Ellie." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. After his death, Samantha started visiting often. 3 times a week, she'd show up with groceries, talk sweetly, insist I see a doctor for checkups. "You need to take care of yourself now that Dad's gone," she would say, smiling that smile I mistook for love. But now I saw it clearly. It was strategy. The lake house, Henry and I bought it when Samantha was 16. It wasn't just property. It was our refuge. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas mornings filled with laughter. Samantha brought friends, then later her husband Ethan. I cooked meals, washed sheets, filled the house with warmth. I thought it meant something to her. I was wrong. And Henry's old Buick, he treated that car like a treasure. Washed it every Sunday, always parked it under the oak tree by the fence. His scent still clung to the seats. Samantha knew that car held my heart, yet she sold it. When the call ended, I didn't weep. I sat on that stiff plastic chair, surrounded by strangers, and felt something awaken inside me. A clarity I hadn't felt since Henry died, because I remembered something 3 days before he passed. Henry handed me a cream-colored envelope. "Ellie," he said, his voice calm, "put this in your dresser. If something happens to me, open it only when your heart is steady." I tucked it away. Grief consumed me after the funeral, and I simply forgot. The nurse called my name. The doctor checked my vitals, told me I was healthy, just needed rest. I nodded politely, but my thoughts weren't in that room. They were with that envelope, with Samantha's cold voice, with Ethan, whose dislike for me had always lingered beneath forced politeness. I took the bus home. According to Samantha, I no longer had a car. I sat by the window, watching life rush by. People hurrying, chasing things. Everyone carries their own hidden sorrow, I thought. And now, I had mine, along with the truth waiting quietly in a drawer. The house felt different when I entered. Silent, but not empty. I went straight to my bedroom, opened the dresser. There it was, the envelope, untouched. My hands trembled as I held it. My name, Lana Reeton, in Henry's careful handwriting. I sat on our bed, his side still untouched, and opened it. Inside were property deeds, company shares, account statements, and a handwritten letter. My vision blurred as I read, "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Forgive me for keeping secrets. I invested our savings quietly. We own more than the lake house. There are 7 properties in total, including the building where Samantha and Ethan live. We also hold shares in 3 companies. You are the sole heir. I kept this hidden so Samantha would not change toward us for money. You are a wealthy woman, Ellie. You always have been." I set the letter down, breath trembling. Henry, a simple retired postman to the world, had been building an empire quietly, lovingly. For me, that night, I walked through the house, touching the trinkets Samantha called old junk. I looked at the framed photo of her as a little girl, sitting on Henry's lap, pure joy in her eyes. When did she turn into a stranger? The next morning, my phone rang again. Samantha, her voice now coated in fake kindness. "Mom, we've transferred your share of the sale. It's not a lot, but it'll help you get by until you find something smaller." My share of my own belonging, we kept 70%. Fair right. Europe is a big opportunity for us. She spoke to me like I was some burden being politely dismissed. "We leave this afternoon. Don't worry, we'll help you find a tiny place when we're back." A tiny place. "Safe travels, Samantha," I said. She sounded relieved, even cheerful, then hung up. I laughed, actually laughed, a deep, unexpected laugh that rose from somewhere long dormant. That afternoon, I watched from the window as they loaded their luggage into a taxi, not even glancing toward my house. Not a wave, not a goodbye. When they were gone, I laid out Henry's documents on the kitchen table. I could reclaim everything, easily legally crush them if I wanted. But no, there was a better way. I called Mr. Lancaster, Henry's trusted lawyer. I need discretion, I said. Reclaim the lake house quietly. Transfer full control of every property, especially the building Samantha lives in, back to me. No one, especially her, must know. He understood that. And that night, for the first time since Henry died, I slept without grief. I dreamed of him sitting in his old chair, newspaper in hand. He looked up at me and smiled. "It's time, Ellie," he said. "Time to stand tall." The next morning, I put on my dark maroon dress, the one Henry loved on, looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a broken widow. I saw a woman with a mission for the world. I was just a lonely widow, abandoned by her only daughter. But behind that facade, I was becoming something else, the unseen owner of everything they thought they controlled. Mr. Lancaster moved swiftly. Within 2 weeks, the fraudulent sale of the lake house had been the car was traced and quietly repurchased under my new private holding company. Even the apartment building Samantha and Ethan lived in, along with 3 other properties, were registered under Whitmore Estate Holdings, a name no one would associate with Eleanor Whitmore. The poor old lady. I didn't move out of my house. It was mine, and I wanted Samantha to believe I had nowhere else to go. Let her feel comfortable in her illusion. 3 weeks later, a letter arrives at Samantha's door while Samantha was in Europe, posting filtered photos of champagne and castles. Mr. Lancaster helped me draft a formal tenant notice, signed by the new mysterious property management firm. Notice to all residents, effective immediately. All tenant agreements have been revised under new ownership. Outstanding dues must be settled within 14 days. Failure to comply may result in eviction procedures. Whitmore Estate Holdings. I imagined Samantha's face when she returned and saw the letter. She always paid rent late, assuming the landlord was too soft to enforce penalties. Little did she know her mother now owned the roof over her head. Meanwhile, in Europe, Samantha called once from a Paris number. Her voice sounded casual, distracted. "Mom, just checking if you're managing okay. We're staying in a villa next week. It's amazing. You should see the marble floors." I smiled. "I'm doing just fine, dear. Things are changing here. Ownerships, papers, it's all quite interesting." There was a pause. "Papers? What papers?" "Oh, nothing for you to worry about. Enjoy Europe." I hung up before she could probe further, becoming the one in control every morning. I reviewed tenant reports, property earnings, and rental contracts. Henry had always said, power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply signs documents. And so I signed, quietly, precisely, the motel on the coast. Renovations began. Summer bookings flowed in. The downtown condo, rented to a law firm for triple the price Samantha sold my house for. The small cafe property, already generating revenue I never knew existed. And then, the building, their building. Samantha returned. 6 months passed. A taxi pulled up in front of the building. Samantha and Ethan stepped out, tanned, smiling, burdened with luxury luggage. They looked refreshed. Entitled. They opened their mailbox. And found a final notice. "Final reminder. Your rent is now 3 months overdue. Eviction scheduled in 7 days, unless dues are cleared." Management. Samantha burst into laughter, waving it at Ethan. "Unbelievable. Our landlord's bluffing again. These old building owners never follow through." For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, it was satisfaction. 1 day later, I walked slowly toward the apartment building, cane in hand, maroon coat buttoned to the collar. Mr. Lancaster met me at the entrance with the new title deed. "Residence," murmured as we entered. They recognized him. A high-profile attorney only appeared for serious ownership transfers. Ethan stood in the hallway, confused. "Mr. Lancaster, why are you here?" The lawyer's voice was calm. "We're here to inspect the property on behalf of the owner." Samantha appeared, her smile fading when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I looked at her gently. "Oh, I live here now." The hallway fell silent. The air in the hallway felt heavier than usual. Samantha's confident smile flickered like a candle in wind. Ethan stepped closer, his tone polite yet stiff. "Mrs. Whitmore, what do you mean you live here now?" I leaned lightly on my cane, taking in the building. My building, the paint I had approved last week, the renovated lobby tiles I had signed off on just yesterday. I decided I needed a change, I said calmly. "So I thought, why not move into one of my own properties?" Samantha's brows furrowed. "You're Properties. Mr. Lancaster opened his briefcase and handed Ethan a thick folder with the official ownership certification. The name Whitmore Estate Holdings was printed in bold, followed by a list of all 7 properties including their building. Ethan's voice dropped. This is a joke, right? Mr. Lancaster spoke, voice steady. As of 3 months ago, all ownership rights were transferred. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore is the sole director of Whitmore Estate Holdings. Samantha blinked, stunned. Mom, but you said you had nothing. You said you couldn't afford. I smiled softly. I never said I had nothing, Samantha. You assumed. The moment her world tilted, Ethan's face lost color. He flipped through pages: property deeds, share certificates, legal seals. This means, he whispered, this means you own this building. Yes, I replied gently, and technically, I'm your landlady. Samantha stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Why didn't you tell me? Ah, there it was. Not regret, not remorse, confusion, because her plan had failed. The final line. I stepped forward slowly, my voice steady. 6 months ago, you sold my house. Macario hung up and never looked back. Do you know what hurt me most, Samantha? She stood silent. It wasn't the money, it was that you believed I was disposable. She opened her mouth, but no words came. A new beginning, but not for her. Mr. Lancaster handed them an envelope. Notice of rent increase and payment demand due immediately. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in eviction under owner's authority. Samantha's eyes widened. Mom, you wouldn't. I looked at her for a long moment. Eleanor, the mother, might not. Then I straightened my back. But Mrs. Whitmore, the property owner, will. Ethan swallowed. Samantha looked around, suddenly aware of the neighbors watching, the gossip forming, the whispers starting. For the first time in her life, she was powerless. I turned, heading upstairs. Wait, Samantha called out, voice cracking. I paused. She took a step forward, eyes shining not with love, but fear. Can we talk? I nodded once, slowly. You have 7 days, I said simply. We will talk then. And I walked past her, up the stairs, leaving her in the hallway she once owned, now standing like a tenant on borrowed ground. 7 days, that's all they had, and I made sure every tick of the clock echoed in their ears. During that week, I quietly moved into apartment 701, the top corner unit, fully renovated, while Ethan and Samantha pretended everything was fine on the outside. The entire building already knew the truth. Did you hear? The old lady they tried to throw out is actually the owner. The daughter sold her house, now lives under her mother's roof. Rent overdue too. Gossip travels fast. Humiliation travels faster. Day 3. Ethan knocks. Ethan came to my door first. His voice was carefully measured, respectful in a way it had never been before. Mrs. Whitmore, may I speak with you? I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. Samantha and I just wanted to explain. We didn't mean to hurt you. We thought you thought I was weak, I said calmly. He swallowed hard. Yes, there was nothing more to say. He left quietly. Day 5. Samantha's turn. She knocked hesitantly, not the loud, entitled knock she used to give when barging into my home. Her voice trembled. Mom, please, can I come in? This time, I stepped aside and let her enter. She walked slowly, as if afraid of breaking something. The sunlight fell across my polished floors, the tall windows overlooking the city. This was my space, my peace. She sat across from me at the small tea table Henry once dreamed of having by a window. The conversation. Mom, I made a mistake, she whispered. Which one? I asked. She looked up, eyes red. All of them. For a long moment, I just watched her. The same girl I held when she cried at 5, now crying because she lost control, not because she was sorry. So I asked the only question that mattered. If I had nothing, truly nothing, would you have still visited me 3 times a week? She broke. Her silence was my answer. The decision. I placed a single paper on the table. A new rental agreement, not eviction, not vengeance. A contract, terms, rent to be paid on time, like any other tenant. No special treatment. Visit me if you want to, not because of what I own, and never again speak to me like I am a burden. She stared at it. You're not kicking us out, Samantha, I said softly. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to teach you what love without respect becomes. Tears finally spilled, not the frustrated kind, the real kind. She signed. One final statement before she left. I said, you sold my house. You sold my memories, but I will not sell you. You are my daughter. But from today forward, you must earn back the right to call me mother. She nodded slowly, clutching the signed paper like a lifeline, and for the first time in a very long time, she said it quietly, sincerely, "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore." Would you like a final epilogue, months later, where we see whether Samantha truly changes or falls back into her greed? It would wrap the story with a powerful emotional ending. 2 weeks passed after the final confrontation, and I began to rediscover something I thought I had lost forever: peace. The mornings felt different now. No more waking up with a heavy chest. No more waiting by the phone like a forgotten object on a shelf. Instead, I made coffee for myself, stepped onto the porch of my new apartment overlooking the city, and breathed like a woman who finally reclaimed her life. One afternoon, as I sorted through some paperwork, I came across an old photograph of Angela, at 8 years old, missing her front teeth, holding a seashell from our first trip to the beach house. My heart didn't ache the way it used to. Instead, I whispered, "I forgive you, but I will never return to who I was." My lawyer confirmed that the apartment was officially mine, and with the money from the restored accounts, I planned something unexpected, not for Angela, not for Henry, but for me. I enrolled in a small travel group for older women who wanted to see the world. My first destination, Florence, Italy. A place I had always dreamt of but never visited because I was too busy being everyone's anchor. On the day of departure, suitcase in hand, I took one last look at the skyline, not with regret, not with bitterness, but with a quiet smile that only those who have walked through fire and come out shining can wear. As the plane lifted off, I closed my eyes and finally said it, not with pain, but with liberation. I may have lost a daughter, but I found myself, and that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. I woke each morning at the same little table where George and I had shared decades of breakfasts, then set out for my neighborhood walks. Neighbors greeted me with that mixture of pity and curiosity reserved for newly widowed women. Mabel, who'd lived next door forever, stopped by one afternoon while I was watering the geraniums. "Beatrice dear, is it true Clara ran off to Europe and left you here alone?" "Yes, Mabel, she went with Marcus. They say it's for a business venture." "And how will you manage, sweetheart? Everyone knows George didn't leave much." If only they knew, I thought. "I'll be all right, really. Do you need anything? I can run over with some groceries." "Oh, you're so kind," she said, that familiar look of relief mingled with concern settling on her face, the same expression I'd seen since the funeral. Her compassion felt rehearsed. The butcher, the bakery lady, the corner grocer, all of them lowered their voices and softened their words around me. I would smile, nod, and accept their offers of help, while inwardly a small part of me relished the double life I was living. One Wednesday, Mr. Caldwell rang. "Mrs. Monroe, good news. I've managed to void the sale of the lake cottage." "That's wonderful," I breathed. "The buyers were unaware of the fraud. They were reimbursed and the property has reverted to you." "And the apartment where Clara lives?" I asked. "That's a bit more complex. Technically, your ownership was always held through the company, but we need to make administrative adjustments so you hold direct control. Give me about 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me posted." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and thought of Clara. 3 weeks into her trip, not a single message, no call, no postcard. To her, I'd ceased to exist. The minute she got the cash she needed, that would change soon enough. I decided to go see the lake cottage. I took the same bus route George and I had taken 100 times. The little cream house with the seaward porch looked unchanged. The new owners had added a couple of potted ferns, but otherwise left it as it had always been. I sat across the street and watched, remembering summers of sandcastles and barbecued fish, of Clara as a child, running along the shore, of George manning the grill while I tossed salads. Those memories had been turned into a commodity by my daughter's cold efficiency. An elderly man emerged and noticed me sitting on the curb. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes, I'm fine, just remembering." I lied. "We heard about this place. We thought it was a steal when we bought it. Terrible to hear it had to be given back," he said. "We did the paperwork through agents," he added. "The daughter handled things for the mother because she couldn't." If only he knew how true that was, I thought. I left with a hollow weight in my chest. It wasn't only the money that stung, but the casual lie Clara had constructed about my frailty to justify her deeds. That evening, I phoned Mr. Caldwell again. "Can you help me recover George's pickup?" I asked. "That will be trickier," he cautioned. "Clara had a power of attorney allowing her to sell it." "How could that be?" I asked. "You signed it a few months ago after George passed." remember? Papers, she said, would simplify funeral and estate matters. Grief had made me careless. I had signed without reading. Is there a way to reverse it? We'd have to prove coercion or deception, he said. Possible, but more complicated. Do it, I said. I want everything returned. From then on, my days split into two halves. Mornings, I played the poor widowbine bread, swapping small talk, accepting offers of help. Afternoons, I became something else entirely, studying ledgers, consulting with Mr. Caldwell, poring over deeds and bank statements. I discovered that George had quietly been an astute investor. Every seemingly small saving had been multiplied, and our holdings were far greater than I'd ever imagined. The apartment building Clara lived in, I learned, sat in a neighborhood whose value was rising fast. Marcus, it turned out, was heavily indebted. He had taken loans using the apartment as collateral, oblivious that he didn't own the title. If the lenders discovered the truth, he would be in dire trouble. One Friday, Mr. Caldwell called with a flurry of news. Mrs. Monroe, the paperwork is complete. You now have direct control of your properties, and I've managed to recover the truck. The buyer agreed to return it for a small fee. Excellent, I said. Send Clara a letter. He hesitated. What kind of letter? An eviction notice, I replied. Silence filled the line. Are you certain? He asked. Absolutely, I answered. She decided I was disposable. She will learn otherwise. All right, shall I send it to Europe? No, wait until she's back. Mabel came running the same afternoon with neighborhood gossip. Beatrice Marcus is in trouble with the bank. The loans he took using the apartment as collateral are under investigation. Word is Clara knew nothing. She'll have to come home to sort it out. Perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly as I'd anticipated. Clara had trusted Marcus, given up her loyalty to us for him, and now discovered he'd been lying. That evening I looked up at the stars and whispering, "Thank you, my love," felt like talking to George himself. The next morning Mr. Caldwell rang again. She's landed, arrived, alone. Alone. I repeated, yes. Marcus stayed behind. Rumor has it, they fought. I'll deliver your letter today. Good. The doorman confirmed she received it in person. The notice gave her 30 days to vacate. When Mr. Caldwell asked the inevitable, "Are you sure?" I was unwavering. She'd tossed me aside with a curt phone call. Now she would face the consequences of that choice. That night I lay awake, picturing the look on her face when reality sank in. Confusion, disbelief, then panic as she realized the notice was legitimate. The next morning the phone rang at 8. Clara's voice trembled. "Mama, I need you." "Good morning, love. How was Europe?" I asked calmly. "Stop. I don't have time. I got this letter, an eviction notice. It names a company called," she fumbled, reading, "Monroe & Co. Do you know them? Is this a mistake?" "George always favored that name for his ventures," I said lightly. "I'm not sure. Let me look. Please, Mom, help me. Marcus left me in Paris," and her voice broke. "He ran off with someone else. I don't know what to do." A perfect irony. Abandoned by the man she'd chosen over me, she suddenly reached for the mother she'd discarded. "Of course, come by. You can stay at my place for now." I prepared. I dressed in a plain gray dress, hair in a tight bun, and practiced the worried widow's face she expected. She arrived, thin, hollow-eyed, suitcase in hand. For a heartbeat I thought she might throw herself into my arms, but she froze, remembering perhaps the last words she'd used. "Come in, sweetheart. Would you like coffee?" I asked. She nodded, and we sat at the kitchen table, where I'd once read George's letters. She told me everything. Marcus had lied about business prospects, squandered money, and run. He'd used her signature on loans without her knowledge. The banks were coming after her. For a moment my defenses softened. I wanted to comfort her, but I remembered the voice that had sold my house and my truck with such casual cruelty. I stifled the impulse. "Did you speak to a lawyer?" I asked. "I can't afford one," she whispered. "We spent everything in Europe." She paused, then asked, "Can I stay here for a little while, until I figured things out?" There, it was the plea I'd waited for. After casting me aside, she now sought refuge in the life she'd abandoned. "Of course," I said, "you're my daughter." Her relief was raw. She hugged me, desperate and clinging. I hugged her back, not with the blind devotion of before, but with strategy threaded into the embrace. "Find some rest," I murmured. "We'll see what we can do." That night I instructed Mr. Caldwell to quietly investigate Marcus's debts and the exact legal exposure for Clara. "Keep it secret," I told him. "I'll handle the rest." He asked about my endgame. "I'll rescue her," I said. but only after she fully understands what it means to fall and why I let her learn the lesson. She moved back into her old room the next day, bringing with her only 2 suitcases and a shoebox. A few days later, she discovered a small manila envelope among Marcus's abandoned things, my name written on it in George's hand. Inside was a short note and a tiny brass key. The note read, B. If you've already found the main envelope, and you're reading this again, it means Clara needs more help. This key opens safety deposit box number 247 at the central branch. There may be something that helps. Love, George. Dad had a safety deposit box. Clara breathed. I feigned surprise. I had no idea. She asked if we should check it. I paused, then agreed. A sliver of hope lit her face. That evening she confessed the scale of Marcus's deception. Over 100,000 in various loans, forgeries of her signature, and looming foreclosures. He used my name for some of these loans, she said, voice small. I don't even know how to prove it wasn't me. My heart tightened for a second. The old maternal instinct wanted to erase her pain, but the performance had to continue. At the bank the next day we emptied box 247. Inside were jewels, heirlooms and pieces I recognized from George's family, and newer items I didn't. A bracelet, an emerald pendant, rings collectively valued at roughly 200,000. Clara's eyes filled with wonder. This could cover the worst of it, she whispered. We could sell some pieces and pay off the urgent loans. Her instinct was to fix the problem with cash, old habits of quick fixes rather than root solutions. Are you sure you want to use Dad's things to pay Marcus's debts? I asked. If we sell them, they're gone. What choice do I have? She said. If I don't pay, they'll seize everything. At home, she spread the jewels across the table, calculating what to sell. It was heartbreaking to watch her reduce family history to dollar amounts. She proposed selling enough to clear the most dangerous debts. It was practical, but it didn't teach her to be accountable. Meanwhile, Mr. Caldwell's call came. Marcus's liabilities exceeded 200,000 across banks and private lenders, some backed by falsified documents signed in Clara's name. If we can prove coercion or forgery, we might absolve her of liability, he said. But it will cost about 50,000 in legal fees, and success isn't guaranteed. I told him to prepare everything quietly. You will pay the legal retainer, I instructed. Do not tell Clara. I want her to accept responsibility before she sees me step in. When I hung up, I poured a small glass of the wine George had saved for special occasions. For the first time in months, I felt the warmth of a plan coming together. I had taken control, and now I would use that control to save my daughter on my terms, to teach her responsibility through hardship, and to ensure that when I finally revealed the full extent of what I'd done, she would understand why I had waited. I was sitting quietly in the clinic's waiting area, the smell of antiseptic thick in the air, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I answered, I heard my only daughter's voice. There was something unsettling in her tone, something sharp and distant. Mom, just letting you know we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. Jason and I needed extra funds, so we sold your seaside cottage and your car. It's done. Don't make a fuss. Goodbye. And just like that, she hung up, no hesitation, no warmth, just a cold transaction of words, as if she were informing a stranger, not the mother who had raised her for 47 years. I sat still for a moment on that hard plastic chair, surrounded by other patients coughing, scrolling on their phones, waiting for their names to be called, but I felt none of it. No grief, no panic, just silence. Then something unexpected happened. I smiled, not out of madness or denial, but because in that instant, something inside me shifted, something fierce, something awake. My name is Clara Whitmore. I am 72 years old, and until that moment, I believed I knew my daughter. 6 months ago, I became a widow. My husband, Samuel, had died of a sudden heart attack at our dining table. We had just sat down for breakfast. He poured my coffee, sweetened it exactly how I liked, kissed my forehead, and said like he did every morning, "Good morning, sweetheart." Those were his last words. After his death, Melissa began visiting oftener, so I believed out of naive gratitude. She handled funeral arrangements, took me to the market, made sure I went to my doctor's follow-ups. She even reminded me to take vitamins. She called it care. I mistook it for love. Now I understood it was strategy. The seaside cottage she sold wasn't just a piece of property. Samuel and I bought it when Melissa was 16, after years of saving every spare dollar. That cottage held birthdays, Christmas dinners, late-night card games, and sunsets, Samuel used to say, were painted by God himself. And the car, my husband's old Chevy pickup, mint green and always polished, the one he treated like a family member. That truck still smelled like his cologne. Melissa knew what those things meant to me. She sold them anyway. The nurse called my name, snapping me back to the present. I stood, feeling oddly steady. The doctor said I was in surprisingly good condition for my age, advised me to take it easy, rest, maybe take a trip somewhere peaceful. A trip. I almost laughed when I left the clinic and walked to the bus stop on foot. Since apparently I no longer owned a car, a slow, gentle rage settled inside me, but beneath it, a strange, quiet purpose began to grow. Because there was something Melissa didn't know, something Samuel had left behind. 3 days before he died, he handed me a thick, sealed folder. "Keep this safe, Clara," he said in that calm voice of his. "If something happens to me, open it, but only when you're ready, not before." In my grief, I tucked it away in the bottom drawer of my dresser and forgot all about it until now. The envelope of truth. The bus ride home felt like a slow descent into a different life, one I hadn't yet faced. I stared out the window as the city passed by, families rushing, people arguing on phones, teenagers laughing at something meaningless. Everyone seemed lost in their own universe, unaware of the war quietly beginning inside mine. By the time I reached my house, the sky had begun to dim with the soft orange of early evening. I didn't take off my coat or make tea like I usually did. I walked straight to my bedroom, to the old wooden dresser where Samuel and I kept our wedding rings on the top tray at night. The bottom drawer. My fingers hesitated only for a moment before pulling it open. There it was, the same thick manila envelope, untouched, with my name written across it in Samuel's neat handwriting. I sat down on the edge of the bed we had shared for decades, and my hands trembled as I held it. The room was quiet, filled with shadows stretching across the walls like memories. I opened it slowly, with the same care one gives to sacred things. Inside were documents, many of them, deeds, legal papers, certificates, thick stacks of statements with numbers I couldn't process at first. And at the very bottom, a handwritten letter. I recognized Samuel's signature curve in the way he formed my name. "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, then my time with you ended sooner than I wanted. Please, forgive me for keeping things from you. I didn't do it out of mistrust, but out of love. I wanted you to live without worry, without the shadow of wealth changing the way people treated you, especially Melissa. Over the years, I invested quietly. Properties, partnerships, shares. The seaside cottage wasn't the only thing we owned. Clara, you are not just comfortable, you are wealthy beyond what you ever imagined. But all of it is protected under a company I formed in silence. You are the sole heir and controller of every asset. I know our daughter. I love her, but I know how easily greed can twist the heart. That is why I kept this hidden. Use this wisely, and most importantly, use it to protect yourself. With all the love I ever had, Samuel." My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes, but not from sorrow. This wasn't grief, it was power awakening. I spread the documents across the bed. 7 properties, including a downtown apartment complex, the very one where Melissa and Jason lived. A small coastal motel, fully paid off. 3 corporate share portfolios with values that made my head spin. Multiple bank accounts under the company name, Whitmore Holdings, all legally under my authority. My husband, a quiet bus driver who read the newspaper every morning like a ritual, had built an empire in silence. My daughter had sold 2 small pieces of it like scraps at a garage sale. Let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. For the first time since Samuel's death, I didn't feel like a grieving widow. I felt like a woman reborn. The call of false kindness. I don't remember sleeping that night, but I do remember feeling alive, fully, sharply alive for the first time in months. Samuel's letter and the papers lay spread across my bed like a map of a life I never knew I had. The sun had barely risen when the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Melissa's name. I stared at it for a moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I answered, my voice calm, the calm of a woman who already knew how the story would end. "Mom," she began, her tone softened with a practiced sweetness. "I wanted to let you know we transferred your portion of the money. Jason said 30% was generous, considering, well, everything. You should check your accounts soon. generous. She had sold my house and my car without permission, and yet she spoke like she had done me a favor. 30%, I repeated gently. Yes, that's fair. She chuckled lightly, mistaking my calm for acceptance, a mistake that would cost her more than she could ever imagine. We just want what's best for you, Mom, she continued. Jason found a wonderful business opportunity in Europe. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer if things go well. When we're back, we'll help you find a small place to live. Something manageable for someone your age. Manageable. As if I were a burden she needed to store somewhere out of sight, I let a small, soft laugh escape, light and almost affectionate. I understand. Have a safe trip, Melissa. Relief rushed into her tone like a flood. I knew you'd be reasonable, Mom. You've always been so understanding. And with a satisfied exhale, she hung up. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, and let the silence settle around me. Then, slowly, I began to laugh, for real. Not out of joy, not out of madness, but out of sheer disbelief at how easily she dismissed me, how confidently she stepped into a future she thought she controlled. That afternoon, I watched from behind the living room curtain as Melissa and Jason loaded their designer luggage into a taxi. They didn't even glance toward my window. Not a wave, not a goodbye. They laughed, kissed between suitcases, full of dreams of a life built on my sacrifices. As the taxi pulled away, I whispered to the empty room, "You sold my house, but you forgot to check whose name is on the land beneath yours." I closed the curtain and turned away. It was time to make a call. The woman they forgot I was the morning after Melissa and Jason left. I got dressed with a care I hadn't bothered with in months. I chose my deep emerald dress, the one Samuel always said made me look like I still had fire in my eyes. I brushed my hair, applied a soft touch of lipstick, and when I looked into the mirror, I didn't see a discarded widow anymore. I saw a woman with a purpose, with Samuel's documents neatly organized in my bag. I headed downtown to meet Mr. Lawson, the attorney who had handled Samuel's will after the funeral. He had been kind that day, gentle even, but when I walked into his office this time, I carried a different energy, and he noticed. He greeted me politely, but when I opened my bag and placed the folder on his desk, his expression shifted from courtesy to astonishment. "Mrs. Whitmore, Clara, this is far more extensive than anything I assumed Samuel left behind." "I know," I said calmly. "I need to know what can be done legally." Quietly, he adjusted his glasses, scanning through property deeds, shares, and company papers with growing disbelief. "You are the sole owner of Whitmore Holdings. Everything, every account, every building, every signature leads back to you. And Clara," he looked up, "the seaside cottage sale was fraudulent. Your daughter had no legal right to sell it. We can recover it immediately." I could have demanded it back that very hour. I could have pressed charges, dragged Melissa into court, and let her drown in headlines and penalties. But I had a different vision. "I don't want a public legal battle," I said, folding my hands carefully. "I want control, full control. And for now, silence." Mr. Lawson leaned back, intrigued. "You wish to recover everything discreetly?" I nodded. "Yes, especially the downtown apartment building, the one Melissa lives in." His eyebrows lifted. "You want her as a tenant, under you." I looked out his office window at the city skyline, at the endless rows of lives playing out without knowing how quickly fortunes could change. "Let her enjoy her life in Europe," I said softly. "When she comes back, I want her to learn what it feels like to stand at a door and realize she no longer has the key." A slow, knowing smile formed on Mr. Lawson's face. "Mrs. Whitmore, I believe I understand you perfectly." Paperwork began. Contacts were made. Discreet legal movements were set in motion like chess pieces, positioning before checkmate. While the world still saw me as the poor, abandoned mother, a different truth began unfolding in quiet signatures and sealed filings. I was reclaiming everything, but not for revenge alone. I was reclaiming myself. The key that no longer. Fit 3 weeks later. The neighborhood was buzzing. Word spread fast. Melissa was back. I sat by my window with a cup of tea, watching life move as usual. Children on bicycles, Mrs. Klein watering her roses, the mailman making his rounds, all so ordinary. Yet I knew today would not be ordinary for her. At 4:17 p.m., a taxi stopped in front of the downtown building. Melissa stepped out. No designer luggage this time, just one worn suitcase. Her hair wasn't styled. There was a look in her eyes I hadn't seen since she was a child. Uncertainty. She stood in front of the building door, pulled out her key, and inserted it into the lock. It didn't turn. She frowned and tried again, and again. Finally, she pressed the intercom, her voice breaking through the speaker. "Hi, it's Melissa. The lock must be broken." The new superintendent, a man she didn't recognize, pressed the speaker button. Name. She hesitated. "Melissa Whitmore." Pause, then, with complete neutrality, the voice replied, "Miss, the owner left instructions. You're no longer listed as a resident. Please check your eviction notice." I saw her freeze, her hand slowly lowered from the intercom. She looked around, almost expecting someone to jump out and say it was a prank, but no one did. The world simply continued, as if she were just another stranger on the street. She stepped back from the door, homeless, at her own home. At that exact moment, my phone rang. I answered calmly. "Yes, it's done," Mr. Lawson said. "The deed transfer is finalized. You are officially the sole registered owner of the Whitmore downtown residences, and the seaside cottage has been restored to your name. All assets are now secured. No one can challenge your holdings." I watched my daughter sink down onto the pavement, clutching her useless key. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson," I said softly. Now, we let her knock. The final thought, I didn't rush to her. I didn't open my door in pity. Not yet. Because sometimes a lesson must be felt in silence before it can be understood in love. And when she finally comes to my doorstep, it will not be the same woman who left me. And I will not be the same woman she abandoned.